Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we're talking with Brian Keith South. He's an author and an expert in AI and other things around college. And we spoke with him a few years ago. So this is a kind of a return, and you're certainly welcome to go back and listen to his episode. It's about 3 years ago. But we want to get things updated because a lot has changed. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. I'm honored and to be on your show.
Right. So I was reviewing your book that you published, just a few short years ago, and a lot of that stuff in there is very good and very interesting and very appropriate. However, I noticed there's one chapter that's getting a little stale, and that would be the AI chapter, where you talk a little bit about, how AI is going and that type of thing. And I think you probably put this to bed just before the main AI breakthroughs of ChatGPT, et cetera, where it went from stuff that big corporations do is build chatbots, and Google uses it to do your searching, and Amazon uses it to sell you stuff.
Right.
And it's kind of switched over now where, it's now available for everyone to some extent. So let's start there. What's, in the latest breaking AI and that type of thing, we get a lot of headlines about, AI has taken everybody's jobs. AI is, killing college as we know it. Nobody's ever going to need an education again. The world is coming to an end because of AI
Right.
on one end. And the other end of that spectrum is AI is going to solve all our problems. And then few short years, everything will be fixed and life will be great. Where do you stand on that, and how does it apply to education?
Well, that's a fascinating question, and it's something I think about all the time. And the reason why I find it kind of hilarious is because two things have happened that are a paradox. It's like nothing has changed and everything has changed. It's almost like reading A Tale of Two Cities. It's the best of times and the worst of times kind of a scenario. And actually, both statements are equally true and not true. So I'll give you an answer of what I think about it. I mean, when I was first writing about AI, it would be no different than if I were in the 1800s and I was in the middle of the 1800s writing about the invention of the automobile, and someday that will happen. And then you and I have an interview in 1920 when cars are off the assembly and they become almost affordable to everyone, and the blacksmiths are out of work and the torchlighters are gone and the butter churners are a thing of the past. So what I've noticed is that I take the middle of the road approach. First of all, people have always been doomsdayers. I mean, in the 1950s, isn't it true? There were shows about Martians that were going to invade Earth, and during Y2K, people thought that the computers would shut down, and we'd all be running around like Mad Max. That's not happening.
Right.
Life goes on, and the same is AI. What I understand is that on the one hand, yes, AI will replace a lot of jobs. That's a fact because especially jobs that require redundancy, those will be replaced. Bank tellers are going to be a thing of the past. Phone operators, even many customer service jobs probably will not be. But then AI will create new opportunities. What I would tell students is to keep an open mind, stay true to your dreams, but embrace this new technology and leverage it. So I don't believe that AI is going to completely decimate us and leave us penniless, nor do I think it's going to be a utopia where we're all going to be on cloud nine and never have to work and live happily ever after in perfect harmony. I think we're going to be in the middle of the roads just as we always have been. It's just that life will continue as it always has been. It's just that certain tools that we'll be able to use with AI it'll just be on steroids. So I can tell you how I've been using AI in my college coaching ventures. Some people would say to me, well, isn't it true because now students will be able to hire agents and you'll probably be out of work because they can have AI write their essays. They can get a virtual coach that can do everything that you do. And I would say just the opposite. I think they're going to need human connection more than ever. And I kind of intimated this back in in the last century, I guess you could say, when I said that AI will actually in some ways compel us to be even more human in a sense, because here's the AI is fantastic because you actually can have everything at your fingertips, but that's a liability in a way too, because what do you choose? What do you do? I mean, if everything is there, it's like a kid in a candy store. There's so many choices, so much availability. What do I choose? So that's where the services I do will be more valuable than ever. I think Tony Robbins actually said, that the quality of our life depends on the quality of questions. Now, if you got an adolescent with raging hormones, little experience, and not solid guidance in their home, they'll have this amazing technology, but the only thing they may know how to ask is what video games can I play next week, or they may even ask it to write their essay, but it probably gonna an AI will probably write a polished essay, but it'll sound generic and canned. The wisdom, the experience, knowing, that you get by getting knocked around in life and by reading voraciously and thinking deeply. I just imagine if you have a mindset like that uses AI and asks, well, how can I best tailor my needs, to tailor your services to provide the best, most comprehensive and personalized support for the student? See, that's why you need people more than ever. It's not AI against humanity. It's synergy. It's a powerhouse. It's like human touch with AI doing the heavy lifting. And that's how I offer my
Right.
services.
Right. Exactly. And I certainly agree with most of that. I think a good analogy would be, if you focus in on one job. So let's say that you worked the assembly line, building cars in the 50s, and there was lots of people on that line, and your job was to, bolt a certain thing, put the doors on the car. And now they've built robots that put that out, do that all day. It was a tough job because doors are heavy and so forth. And now the robot does it. And now you're out of work, is one way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people need to get a lot more entrepreneurial in saying, well, I was solving the how to get doors on cars problem. Now that problem is solved. What's the next problem I can solve?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you could talk to the average business owner at every level, they've got zillions of problems that they would love to be solved. And they will hire people that will solve those problems, whether they're internal or external people. Sometimes they're going to outsource. Lots of companies will outsource their accounting or outsource their whatever it might be. And sometimes they'll do it internal. But I think for a lot of situations, I think students and parents need to start thinking about, well, if my job, if my identity is how do I solve putting doors on cars, and now that job's not available anymore, well, yeah, that can be a challenge. But
Right.
if your identity is I'm good at solving mechanical problems in a car plant, well, again, there's lots of problems and they can always do it better. They can always do it faster. They always can do it cheaper. And if you're willing to participate in that, instead of just saying, the world owes me a job and this is what I know how to do. And if that job goes away, woe is me. Well, yes, that is a reality for many people that multiple jobs, multiple careers even are the norm compared to what our grandparents did.
Right. Well, that's why my services are essential, because I help them open doors.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, you could actually use AI. I mean, you could actually ask a question. Hey, I was a former door assemblyman in a auto plant in 1950. I possess fine motor skills. I have off the charts mechanical abilities. I've led a team in over the years. If I take these skills and apply them to 20th century world, what opportunities would be available for me? And it would spit out tons of possibilities. List either companies you could apply for, courses that you could take to upgrade your skills to be even more competitive, and even provide a step-by-step approach to how to navigate to the new dimension of. I think employment is actually an archaic word now, because I think, like you were saying, I think the trend is you have to be more inventive, more creative, more entrepreneurial. I think the cookie cutter days of stamping it at 9 o'clock and taking your coffee break, lunch break, and water fountain break, and then clock out at 5, or I mean, there are probably maybe a few of those left. Just like there are probably still some people that write with goose quills and ink. For the most part, we're in a whole new world, or if I'll just have to say it, a brave new world. That's what's
There you go. So yeah, so how do you see students using AI right now as part of the admissions process or college process, and how could they take it to the next level?
I mean, I think the answer to that question is, what can't they do? I mean, there are so many choices. There's so many things that they could do. That's what I was intimating earlier. It's not a question of what you can do. It's like you're in the candy store. What do you select? Or, so here's a couple of things. I'll approach this from how I support students using AI, and I can throw out some, just a few of like, countless resources that they could use AI to jump to the next level. First of all, like I'm right now working with some students that are taking AP level courses and they struggle with reading and with comprehending that, because that's not really their round wheel. Some of the ones I work with are fabulous with mathematics, and the in-depth literary analysis that they need to do these type of problems are just it's just I might as well be speaking a completely different language to them. So what I've done is take their textbook, and I would upload it into a number of AI platforms, and I would say, I need you to help me prepare a lesson that I could explain to this student that covers every single thing they need to know in order to ace, their AP exams. But I want you to write it at a level that a 10-year-old can understand it. Take all the concepts, write it very simple language, everything that's in this text, break it down into bullet points that I could explain, add some visuals to really bring it alive, and maybe even a couple of videos to really catch their attention. And I've done that. And one student in particular, who the parent described, experienced some reading challenges or whatever, got an A+ in AP English and an A- in AP history because of that approach. So because I was able to use AI as my silent partner and bring it, I was able to explain these things to them. I mean, I could have done something almost similar to that 3 years ago, but it would have taken weeks of planning and tons of research. I was able to, I could walk down the street before the traffic light turned green. I already had everything all laid out and planned. So that's one way from a mentor or an instructor's way that AI has been extremely helpful. Now let's look at it from the student angle. There are resources that students can use in conjunction with my support that could skyrocket their college application approach. One of them is called collegio.ai. It's a free college counselor that provides personalized college recommendations based on thousands of data points, their goals, their interests, what stages they are. It even includes a scholarship finder and essay feedback. So if they want an additional support besides I've assemble all that together, bam, in just a matter of minutes, they've got a neat little profile that will give them everything that they need to make an intelligent decision. There's another resource. It's called apply.com. It's a free college search tool. It filters the college by cost, by major, by selectivity. It has virtual tools and scholarships that they could use to custom tailor their college approach. And there's also another one called College Decider. It's a free AI tool. They can enter their GPA, their test scores, and it'll spit out the instant reach, target, and safety schools list that they can provide. Not to mention, there are other tools that they could use, that like U.S. Department of Education sites now that can show them their earnings, the amount of how to navigate student debt. It'll provide graduation rates for some of the places that they're applying to. So they could actually write up something that would make the average business plan of yesteryear seem like chicken scratch. I mean, so that's what AI can do for them. From what I've seen and from what I've used, that's a far cry from our life is over now that AI is here. Now it'll give them more options that they ever can be. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be happily ever after in La La Land. It just means that they have more tools and more resources to make more intelligent decisions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other piece of it, right? Is most students have challenges, and sometimes they're big challenges, sometimes they're small challenges, but most students, again, are struggling with something, whether it's academic related or socially related or what their home life is or financially related, all these different struggles. And you throw AI on the mix and there's still going to be all those types of struggles. It just
Right.
might be different students and different struggles,
That's right.
right? When COVID hit, it was nearly impossible for students to take the ACT and SAT. So most colleges said, well, if we continue to demand the tests, then we're not going to have any customers. And of course, that made no sense. So they said, all right, well, we'll make the test optional. Now, since that time, some colleges said, you know what, that test didn't seem that important to us. Now that we haven't had it, well, we can skip it forever. We decided we don't need it. Other colleges are bringing it back and saying, actually, we would like to see test scores. But that changes, potentially, if you could put up great test scores, that would be another feather in your hat. And it might make you get accepted to some schools that you wouldn't have been accepted to because you were not able to put your test score out there.
Yeah.
And then some other kids got accepted because they weren't going to test very well and they didn't have to. And therefore they were accepted on their other criteria.
Well, I think a funny thing that
So-
happened when I went, ironically, during the COVID time, even though the colleges made testing optional, I had many families want me exclusively to tutor them or guide them on passing the SAT or the ACT. And I said, look, you don't have to do this. A lot of the colleges say these are optional. They said, no, that doesn't matter. I want him to, I want him to do it anyway. I said, but actually, according to the data I have, a more pragmatic approach would be to focus on the essay because that's something that is unique, tailored specifically to the student. And that will probably be a far greater determinant for getting into the college to go, no, that doesn't matter. We want you to help them with this. Even when it was optional, I had a lot of people that wanted preparation for that test.
Right. Absolutely. But what happens is they move the goalposts, they change how it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And different rock star students got accepted to the highly selective schools than would have been accepted had they not made the changes. But in the end, is that fair or unfair, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think from a student's perspective, fair or unfair is whether it helped or hurt me in particular, not whether it's globally a good idea or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kids that could test well say that was unfair. They didn't take my test score. And kids that got in say, oh, that was fair because they were using that unfair test in order to keep me out.
Right. But even before any of this happened, long before, even before the internet came into scene, there were students who had perfect SAT scores, 4.5 GPAs. They were the captain of their football team, the captain of their rowboat team. I mean, using the joke from, the movie Legally Blonde, even dewormed orphans in Somalia, let's say, they still didn't get into the college. They said, I'm sorry, we regret to inform you that, we can't admit you. And they go, but on paper, they were perfect. I mean, they couldn't have done any better. And then there were students that I knew personally that didn't even have a B average that got into UC Berkeley just because they knew the right people who helped them say the right things in their application and they slipped through the cracks and they got in anyway. So it's just,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's right. So that's the whole process of, AI is changing the landscape and some of the rules are changing, and that's what's going to happen is how they admit. I think that's one of the big problems that we're dealing with in general, right? Is it's not so much, in the job situation, right? I have these skills. How do I find somebody that needs these skills? In the college area of admissions and that type of thing, it's like, well, colleges want, qualified students that will excel at their institution. They don't want people that will struggle. They don't want kids that will drop out or change careers or change majors.
Mhm.
That's not their goal. I mean, it happens, but if they knew for certain that some kids are not a good fit, no matter what their statistics look like, they would choose to not take them. It's not in anybody's interest to do that. The
Correct.
problem is it's really hard to do that match and do it well. And I, you know, and as we get better at that, that would be great. There's a comedian that talked about AI and it said, I didn't have time to write the email, so I just wrote a couple quick bullets and then I took it to AI and it formatted into a nice, perfect email. All the grammar was correct and looked very businesslike, and I sent it. And then the guy that received it didn't have time to read it, so he put it into AI, and AI tore it down and put it into bullets. I think that's the reality of when it comes to a lot of this stuff, right? AI
Yeah.
isn't making it very easy for students to apply to a lot of colleges.
Yeah.
So now colleges are getting so many applications that now they're going to use AI to help them read them because so it is a kind of a catch-22 of how this is all going to play out. But as things get better, as they realize, how this works, and again, with the goal of doing what we really want. We don't want people sneaking in and that type of stuff. What we really want is good fit to be found at a reasonable effort, right?
Right.
Again, reading all the applications and all that stuff. So if they can streamline it, they will. And is that fair? Well, I don't know. Fair is a very challenging word.
Yeah, I think that's always been true though about fairness and what seemed fair. What I tell the students I work with is that regardless with AI or not AI, is to, like I mentioned in my book, to do a thorough inventory of themselves, to know what's important to them, what their values were, and be forthcoming about what their challenges are, and when they present them on paper, to present them where their strengths, where actually that these challenges gave them a certain insight, which actually gave them the focus to pursue a major and a career choice, or a way of helping them understand, or a way of seeing the world in a way that maybe someone without that particular dilemma would not be able to come up with it. So that's what I tell them to do. In other words, because one thing that seems kind of universal about colleges, or especially in the essay, they'll ask, what challenges have you overcome? And that's tricky for a lot of students because without the proper guidance, they'll treat that question as a confessional and they'll spill all their dirty little secrets. So, I got caught smoking grass and I got kicked out of college, and now I was ashamed of my family. And no, you don't want to say that in your essay. You want to say that, at the beginning, because I was so enthusiastic about all the opportunities that I wasn't clear about which choice I wanted. But then with insight, with a proper mentoring and coaching, with a few courses, now I'm more focused than ever. And if I didn't have these challenges, I would have not have the level of focus that it's going to make me excel at your university. That's kind of how I guide them.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Obviously you present the best possible student and in the best possible light, as just kind of by definition. But again, it's also, the goal isn't necessarily to, just win, so to speak, because you want to win at the institutions that are the right fit for you.
Exactly.
So just because you can figure out how to get into XYZ prestigious school, the real question is, do I even want to go there, or should I go there? I think that's the step prior to, how do I present the best possible student? Because realistically, it's, how do I present the best possible student for this school?
Right.
And this school is the part that you need to figure out first.
Well, my approach in working with students is a holistic approach. When people like the service you do about cost of college, what I think most people think about when they think of the cost of college, they think of the most prestigious school and how much would it cost for me to do that. Well, maybe that prestigious school is not a perfect fit for the student. As you said, what you have to look at is the whole picture. Okay, there's the cost, but then also when we think of costs, you also have to think of value. What value is that going to bring to that individual student? Like, for example, is a student applying to medical school at Harvard because they really want to be a doctor. And Harvard is the best institution that will nurture that particular student's needs and be the perfect environmental and politically fit a niche that will launch them into the career that's or what if that person is prone to depression and can't stand cold weather and grew up on the beach their whole life, and now they've never been to a place where they won't see the sun for another 6 months from now. Is that going to be the best environment for them to focus and to do that? Now, some people make that choice. They'll say, look, okay, I've been a beach bum the last 20 years, but I'm willing to sacrifice 4 or 5 years of my life to be, in a cold, because the education that's going to be offered at this school is going to be worth the sacrifice. But others may not be able to do that. Then they also have to think about where they're going to live. Like, for example, the cost of living in Kearney, Nebraska is going to be different than the cost of living in San Jose. So when you think of cost, we're not just thinking of the cost of the college or the housing. We're also thinking about living. Is the university a self-contained university? I mean, I, for example, chose to go to UC Berkeley because I didn't want to drive 10 miles in every direction, I wanted everything right there at my fingertips so I could be focused not only on my studies, but on my socialization. Everything was right there, kind of in a centralized atmosphere. So for me, that was important. That might be not important to someone else who wants to study, let's say, zoology or engineering at a college, let's say at UC Davis, which is kind of semi-spread out. So, you have to look at all these things, like the environment of where you're going to school, the cost of the school, the type of student that's going to the school, what they're going to study, and how is the information presented. Now, some people are hands-on, they need direct intervention, or they need to be in smaller classes. Others, they could be dropped in, in a class of 300 people. It won't matter to them. So it really, they really have to look at where, the whole picture, as you say, not just the college and the cost, but what is the value cost for that student individual.
Right. Absolutely. So holistic planning is important. AI is not going to completely end the world. At least that's our opinion. We could be wrong. So let's wrap things up here. But before I let you go, can you tell people a little bit more? I know you've got a book out there. You do some consulting services. So if people want to learn more about what's going on, can you tell us what your website and other information might be?
Sure. They can go directly to my website, which is Mighty Mentor to You, and that's mighty like mighty, and the number 2 and the letter U.com. And that will provide my contact information. It will describe the services I offer, students I've supported in college they've got into, and then they could even book an appointment directly to meet with me.
All right. We will put all that information in the show notes as well. So if you're driving or exercising right now, you can just pop to our website and look it up. All right. That's all for today. Thank you, Brian, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns 2 companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.